The audacity. Trying to bite me while we're filming an episode about plants that eat insects. The nerve. Hi everyone, it's Melissa, your plantita abogada here at Tasteful Nodes, coming to you today with our third Halloween episode. That's right, so I said that we were going to have 5 Halloween episodes for October and part of November. We are in number 3, my friends. Today's episode, in case you haven't guessed by now, is about carnivorous plants. And these are the carnivorous plants in my collection, and I'm so excited to share the information I found with you. I'm a complete nerd when I find interesting things like this. I mean, I fall rabbit hole into rabbit hole, and yeah, good Halloween stuff, right? Before I get started, we're going to go ahead and run through our 3 disclaimers. You know, the plantita abogada has to have them at the beginning of each episode. So 1, KKB tayo, kanya-kanyang bayad. For our friends in the West, it means we each pay our own way. If any of these beauties entice you just like they enticed me, please don't pay your rent money because I am not paying any plant child support. So number 2, I'm not an expert. Anything I say here today will probably be used against me, but only if I claim it's a fact, which I'm not. So because I'm not an expert, all I can tell you about is my personal observations. So my personal observations are also my personal opinions. Any expert information or testimony, as you will, that I will share, I'll be sure to put the sources at the bottom of the screen as well as in the description box down below. And then number 3, because I'm not an expert, I want you to take anything that I say regarding my personal observations with a grain of salt. Find the people in your community who actually have dealt with carnivorous plants, who know where to buy them, who know how to care for them in your environment. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Those are the people that you want to make sure to confirm my information with. And of course, you could also check the sources that I cite down below just to see that I am in fact not misquoting them or something. But you know, attorney, we don't want to mess up on that kind of stuff. Anyway, let's get into it. Murderous plants, defense plants, and carnivorous plants. These are 3 different categories that I'd like to discuss. Let me start out with murderous plants really quick. So murderous doesn't automatically mean carnivorous. Carnivorous plants were placed in a subsection or a subcategory of murderous plants by the study that was referred to in this article by the International Carnivorous Plant Society. But the International Carnivorous Plant Society argues that murderous plants do not equal carnivorous plants. And I kind of agree. And the basis for their argument, like I said earlier, is that certain plants actually kill things without benefiting from them. It's a huge difference in terms of thinking what defines a murderous plant. The plant that the Carnivorous Society referred to in their article is called a desert stingbush. Now, this desert stingbush is exactly what you would imagine. The desert stingbush is a plant that lives in the desert and is covered with thorns, stinging thorns, poking out all over the place. It's just not a very friendly looking plant, I would say. And based on the pictures that they shared on their website, absolutely not friendly looking plant. I mean, unless, you know, you consider welcoming your guests with impaled bodies on your front lawn friendly and welcoming, then yeah, maybe that plant is for you. But I digress. So this desert stingbush has these spikes all over it, right? And the premise is that these spikes evolved, you know, as perhaps a defense mechanism. Fine, let's run with that. Well, you know, the thing is, there are these little pests, and if you're a plant parent, you know these, called aphids. And they apparently enjoy desert stingbush. It's one of their favorite things. Now, these aphids are not affected by these thorns on the sides of this desert stingbush. In fact, you know, it's just like, oh, cool, another mountain to climb, another thing to eat, whatever. Aphids don't care. What does care about these aphids are another bug, another insect called syrphid flies. And syrphid flies also enjoy aphids. So aphids enjoy the desert sting bush, and syrphid flies enjoys aphids. Sounds like, you know, a match made in heaven, right? No, no, no. So the syrphid flies go in for the kill on the aphids, and guess what happens? They get impaled on the thorns of the desert sting bush, which completely defeats the purpose, right? You would hope that, you know, evolution would give you something that can actually work to your benefit, and evolution went ahead and gave this sting bush spikes, and the spikes don't protect it against aphids, so therefore there's no beneficial use for the spikes where aphids are concerned. And where you have these beneficial insects that would eat the aphids off of the sting bush, guess what the sting bush does? It kills these beneficial insects. So it kills its guests, it kills its friends. Who needs friends when you are a sting bush, I guess? But yeah, so the sting bush, one, is a murderous plant because it kills beneficial insects. I mean, these, I'm just flabbergasted. These flies actually could kill the aphids that are munching on these sting bushes, but you know, they can't because they can't reach them. And number two, even when their dead carcasses are hanging off of these thorns, guess what? The sting bush gains no nutritional benefits, no nutrients from these carcasses. Literally killing for the sake of killing. So yeah, I kind of agree with the International Carnivorous Plant Society on this one. Murderous plant. So they didn't mention this explicitly in their article, but they did mention that some plants have these traps as a defense mechanism to protect themselves. And that is why I have defense plants as the second plant to consider in terms of, you know, murderous plants. So one, we talked about the murderous plants, right? Those are absolute murderers. They are like the Freddy Krueger of plants. They just kill you. Think the hand with a knife, that's what I'm doing, okay? Number two, defensive plants. So defensive plants actually use these traps as a defense mechanism, so in defense of itself. So a plant that they mentioned in their article, which is Proboscidea louisianica, I'll put the name at the bottom of the screen, actually employs this resin on its leaves, right? And this resin gets bugs to stick on it. Murder, yes. Do they benefit from the murder? Absolutely. So this resin prevents these insects from munching on them, prevents them from eating them. Does the Louisianica derive nutrients from this resin? No. No, it doesn't. And for that reason, it cannot be considered a carnivorous plant. Because, and let's go to carnivorous plants, number three, carnivorous plants actually benefit from the insects carcasses that they trap. So I have here in my notes, carnivorous plants are just plants with special skill sets that help them adapt to their surroundings, which are usually in infertile soil or with soil that has very, very little nutrients in it, and allows them to get nutrients in another way. So one, these plants live in places where most plants don't want to live just because of the quality of the soil. But two, this area that they choose to live in, they're allowed to, I guess, not compete with anyone else because they're the only ones who have evolved to survive in this area. And they've evolved because they actually found ways to supplement their diets through nutrients provided by bugs. Yes, makes sense, right? So in my notes, I say, think Liam Neeson in Taken. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want. Something, something, something. But what I do have are a very particular set of skills I have acquired over a very long career, blah, blah, blah. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. Carnivorous plants are Liam Neeson in Taken. So they've acquired these skill sets, they've acquired these specialized mechanisms that help them trap insects, lizards, frogs, sometimes rats, for nutrients. So they are quite specialized plants in that aspect. What differentiates them from animals is the fact that they still need the sun to get energy, right? So photosynthesis. Otherwise, yeah, they would probably not be considered plants. Carnivorous plants are known for doing three things. 1, capturing and killing prey. 2, having some sort of mechanism that could aid in the digestion of said prey. And 3, deriving a benefit, usually nutrients, right? Because they live in inhospitable environments, from the prey that they captured. So that's something that carnivorous plants all have in common. And that's something that murderous plants don't have, as well as defensive type plants. And that, my friends, is what makes carnivorous plants. An interesting thing about carnivorous plants that you won't notice in, let's say, aroids, is that they try to keep their flowers away from the parts that could actually trap the insects. So you've got the flowers far up here, far away from any of the dews that could capture insects on these rainbow plants. On the Drosera down here, I know this thing is broken, but bear with me. So you've got, see, I told you it's broken. So you've got this little Drosera right down here. I don't know if you can see him, but notice that its flower, where it would be pollinated, is all the way up here, right here at my pinky. So what it does is it keeps beneficial pollinators away from the traps itself, because come on, give and take, right? I don't eat you, but you pollinate me, that kind of thing. Yeah. There are approximately 583 species of carnivorous plants in the world, and they are spread across 20 genera, 12 families, and 5 orders of flowering plants. An interesting fact that I found during my research is that Charles Darwin, as in the Charles Darwin, had a fascination with carnivorous plants. In fact, he had such a fascination with it that he wrote a book called Insectivorous Plants. It was something that an article in the International Carnivorous Plants page took offense to. And let me get this right, because the quote is hilarious. What the International Carnivorous Plant Society said in the article is this: "We do not call these plants insectivorous plants because no self-respecting carnivore is going to check the ID of a potential prey to make sure it's an insect." So carnivorous plants have 6 different types of basic trapping mechanisms. 1 is adhesive, and I have a few examples here. This would be an example of flypaper, where the leaves, you know what, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. So this is an example of flypaper. This right here is an example of immobile tentacles. This right here is an example of mobile tentacles. Another example of a basic mechanism of trapping for carnivorous plants would be the pitfall. And you can see the pitfalls in these guys as well as in these guys. Kind of give you an idea, right? Pitfall. There is a lobster pot, a pigeon trap. These bugs are really testing these plants today. A snap mechanism, which would be these guys right here, this one, and suction. If you think about it, all of these mechanisms sound like something out of Final Destination. Sound like terribly horrible deaths, but quite necessary for carnivorous plants. So the first plant we'll talk about are Droseras. So Charles Darwin once said, and I'm going to quote him, okay? "I care more for Drosera than the origin of species. I will stick up for Drosera to the day of my death." Dramatic, yes. Infatuated, most likely. But can you blame him? Drosera is perhaps the largest genera of carnivorous plants. There are, according to Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew, about 251 accepted species, right? And I have 3 of them here on the table. Here we go. So this guy is the same as this guy right here, and let me find out the name. This is a Drosera bermanii right here, and right here, the little guy with the flower earlier that I showed you. And over here, my friends, right here, are pygmy Droseras. And let me get the name right. It is Drosera omissa hybrids by Drosera pulchella. Really cute little guys. Yeah, so those are the 3 Droseras that I have on this table right now. So one thing that's really neat about Drosera is that, let me go ahead and pull one really quick. Yeah, go with this guy. Is that these tentacles are covered in dew, kind of like flypaper. So it traps the prey, and then the tentacles move closer together so that a whole bunch of tentacles can actually be in contact with the prey. And then some Drosera, not these guys right here, but some of them, like the Drosera indica, the one that looks like this Byblis, will actually curl up on itself. Yeah, very alien-like. But what's really neat is that when it starts moving like that to contain its prey, it actually starts releasing digestive enzymes to start breaking down and digesting its newly caught prey. Yeah. Exciting stuff, huh? So cool thing about the Droseras is, at least these pygmy kinds, is that they have this thing called gemme. If you look at the Drosera, this pygmy one, it actually grows in a rosette pattern. Gemme are actually leaf-like structures or seed-like structures. They look like, I don't know what to call them. They look like little crowns in the middle of the flowers, right? In the middle of the plants. With these guys, what happens is they're actually living beings. So you could pluck them off with toothpicks and then put them on a moist substrate. The person that I got this from, her name is Ai. Hi Ai. She's with Sundews and Rainbows Insect Catcher Plants on Facebook. She actually gave me that tip, and I'm quite excited because I think, you know, my eyes aren't what they used to be, and I should be wearing my glasses right now, but vanity. But I do think I see what she's talking about in terms of gemme, and I can't wait to plant these and test that theory out, and hopefully, you know, get more pygmies made. She had this really cool dish. So if you think of cactus gardens, you can think of all these cacti arranged pretty. She had pings, so Pinguicula, and she had those little pygmy Droseras around it, and it was just so cool. And this thing is dry, and I'm going to need to take care of that real soon. But it was so cool, and I hope to replicate that someday. That'd be neat. But enough about those alien plants with their weird tentacles. Let's talk about Venus flytraps. So this, my friends, is a Dionaea muscipula. God, I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. But mucus, mucinex, you know, yeah, not a sponsored post. But yeah, check these guys out. Yeah, gotta love them. Venus flytraps are so well known and so well loved. I mean, from youngsters to adults, we all love us some Venus flytraps. And oh, I got a carcass right in that one. With Venus flytraps, as far as the name is concerned, it hits up the goddess of love twice. One, through its common name of Venus flytraps. Two, through its scientific name. So Dionaea is actually derived from the name Dione, which is Aphrodite's mother, apparently, in Greek mythology. If Charles Darwin gushed about the Drosera, he was completely infatuated with the Dionaea. In fact, let me go ahead and quote him, okay? Claiming of the Dionaea, which I look at as the most wonderful plant in the world. And this is according to his letters, friends, that were not published. I included links in the description box down below if you wanted to check out the handwritten letter. But I gotta say, the feeling is mutual, Darwin. The feeling is mutual. I mean, they're just so weirdly wonderful. How can you resist, you know, plants that have these gorgeous eyelash-looking things that actually interact? We have a weed here called makahia, and it literally is a weed, and it sells, or it used to sell in the US for like $15. You guys call it the shy plant or the nerve plant. And man, this is a lot more charming, a lot more useful too, I'll tell you that. So the most dramatic plant, or the most dramatic trap that I've seen, belongs to the Dionaea, or the Venus flytrap. What happens is when a bug, like this poor unfortunate fly over here, when the bug lands on the leaf collapses closed. We all know that part. what I didn't know until I researched, and boy, it's true. So what happens is, if you notice, and I'll zoom in, is that the leaves are actually quite flat on the side. You see, sorry baby, see the leaves? They're just flat halves, right? But when something lands in there, these leaves actually get thicker on the sides, and that's what causes the closing mechanism, right? Is just this reaction. So it's triggered by movement. And oh, and there's another one, another bug in there. Are you dead yet? I'm not sure. So the motion triggers and it closes slightly, and then more movement causes the trap to close even further. When the trap is fully closed, like these guys over here, that one right over there, there's one over here, what happens is digestive juices are released and the prey's nutrients are absorbed by the plant through the inside surfaces of the Dionaea. An interesting thing about the Dionaea is that unlike the Droseras, who are completely open to the elements, once this trap closes, the digestive juices, the enzymes are completely protected inside, and the plant can take as much as it wants, even if there's rain that happens. What I did learn from research is that in the wild, these guys, and I believe they're only found in North Carolina in the wild, they actually eat beetles. But here in the Philippines, we've got lots of bugs. And as I could tell by two of these traps already, they're definitely enjoying flies here. We live on a farm, lots of fruit, so flies are definitely something that happens here. Now, I only have 3 varieties of Dionaea on this table, and let me get their names properly so that I don't misname anybody. So this guy that I'm holding right now is the Dionaea Gold Cup. I can't find any information online, and I'm not too sure if it's a locally made hybrid or if it's one abroad, or if it's one that's recognized abroad. But check out those leaves. I mean, it's got these really broad leaves, frilly, really different from, let's say, this guy. And that's the fun thing about Venus flytraps, is that there's something for everyone. Now, this guy has smaller leaves, not as frilly as this one. Put them side by side. But what this guy has, and I'll put the Gold Cup down really quick. Okay, darling, there we go. So what this guy has is that, and I'll show you a close-up because I know it's hard to see, is that its teeth are actually serrated. And it's really neat. It's called a sawtooth, Dionaea sawtooth. And the thing with this is, if you look at these 2 Venus flytraps, its traps have these eyelash or finger-like claws, right, at the end of it. Well, each claw of this guy, so think about 5 fingers, right? Each claw of this guy is serrated into 2 or 3 serrations on top of that. So it gives like this, I don't know, appearance of eyelashes, like those fake eyelashes or fringe. That's what this one looks like. And over here is the this one is the Dionaea sinagdala, and of course I had to have it because it is a Philippine made hybrid. And sinagdala in Tagalog actually means starlight. And he's a small little guy right now, but such a voracious eater, such a good little eater. Lots of gnats in here, and I keep them moist, and they've been doing well so far. And I think that's the end of my ode to Aphrodite and the goddess of love and all of her minions. I love you guys. Our next plant up on the list is the Nepenthes. So Nepenthes are commonly known as tropical pitcher plants, right? And it would be these guys right here with these pitchers. And they're cool as heck. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen those viral videos where this one guy goes to, gosh, was it Indonesia or Thailand? and they cooked pitcher plants for him with like sticky rice on the inside, cooked in coconut milk. Oh man. So normally I wouldn't even think about eating a pitcher plant just because, you know, of what pitcher plants eat. So pitcher plants eat anything from bugs to lizards to frogs. There was one pitcher plant I was looking at getting, I can't remember it off, truncata. So I was gonna get a truncata, right? And it was big enough to catch mice. Big pitcher plant, right? And you know, I didn't in the end. I think about it often. There are roughly 181 known species of pitcher plants, but given that we don't have many resources to look up all pitcher plants here, I would say that that number is probably well below what is actually out there. Here in the Philippines, we've got a whole bunch as well. Out of the 181 species, 59 are actually Philippine species. A couple of Nepenthes that would be worth mentioning in today's video that are specific to the Philippines would be the Nepenthes maximoides, as well as the Nepenthes attenboreae. Yeah, it's such a long name. You know me and names. Anyway, I just found out about the Nepenthes maximoides, so pardon me if I have to refer back to my notes, okay? So in my notes I have here that the Nepenthes maximoides was discovered by botanists at the Royal Botanic Garden at Kew. And they discovered that it had been in a collection that was collected over 100 years ago, and it was mislabeled. And it had lived for over 110 years mislabeled in that collection. The plant that it was mislabeled as, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was an Indonesian plant, and I think that's what caught their attention, is they were wondering why an Indonesian Nepenthes was located in the Philippines, and they realized that it wasn't the same plant. But the unfortunate thing about this is, according to Kew, that may be the only species in existence, just because nobody has seen it ever since. So 110 years later, no one's seen this plant. And if you guys have not seen my Mount Banahaw episode, you got to see it, because it was at Mount Banahaw that the botanists believe the maximoides was collected from. And if you watch that video, you'll see exactly why I agree with them. I mean, these botanists determined that the only place that they could have found this at was at Mount Banahaw. Just because no one had seen it in over 100 years or in over a century, they assume that it's extinct. I agree with them when they say that there's still some hope in finding it, just because Mount Banahaw is under a protected status and pilgrimages up to the mountain have been stopped. There are a lot of flora and fauna that are rarely seen and have been found up on that mountain. So if it's anywhere, it's probably at Mount Banahaw. And I got my fingers crossed for that one. So the second Nepenthes I wanted to mention is the Nepenthes attenboreae. Yeah, I think that's how it's said. So this plant was discovered in 2009, and the botanists who discovered it decided to name it after famed naturalist Sir David Attenborough. What is special about this Nepenthes is it is massive. And when I say massive, I mean probably can kill more than just a rat. Yeah. According to my research, according to what I found online, and I have the sources down in the description box below if you need to check it yourself. So what is special about the attenboreae is that the stems could grow up to 5 feet, and the diameter of the pitchers themselves, can be up to a foot in diameter. Which is insane. Can you imagine the things that thing can eat? I can. It's kind of interesting, impressive, and horrifying at the same time. Those stats actually make the attenboreae the world's largest carnivorous plant to date. So, do you remember when I mentioned traps and the 6 basic traps? Well, this is what I refer to as a pitfall. So a pitfall trap are leaves that have been modified to create a pit, and that is exactly what this is. So here's the leaf right here, and normally, let me find you something. Before they turn into pitchers, they start out as little buds. And gosh, these guys are not looking well. Here we go. Are you gonna be okay? So they start out as little buds right here at the end. See this guy right here? There we go. Let me get him closer. So they start out as little buds right here at the tip of my finger, and I'll get closer to you guys. As it grows older, these little stems or these leaves extend, the bud gets bigger, and you get your pitchers. Barring unfavorable conditions, and that's why I mentioned some of these look dry. It's been a weird rainy season here, and normally during rainy season I don't have to water. I've had to water every other day in the past 2 weeks. It's been bad. It's been pretty bad, yeah. Crunchy. So normally the pitchers start growing out of the ends. I mean, I have one growing out right here, but man, it's just, it hasn't been good. Yeah, look at this guy right here. Crunchy pitcher plant. Yeah, not cool. Talking about the different parts of the pitcher, we've got the lid, which is the operculum. You figure it out. The lid actually keeps rainwater out, which helps protect the digestive enzymes from being diluted. Gosh, sometimes, from what I understand, there are some toilet Nepenthes, and they're called toilet Nepenthes because shrews and moles and rats will stand on the lid, on the lip of the plant right here, and they'll eat nectar off the top of the lid. So the lid sometimes contains something to attract prey to it, to the pitcher itself. And then talking about the lip, which is actually the rim, so it's right over here. The rim is called a peristome, and usually it's slippery, it's slimy. Yeah, beautiful, look at this guy. Sometimes it can be sharp. So when it's slippery and slimy, it helps the prey fall into the trap. And then when it's sharp, it also prevents the prey from escaping. So it has a dual purpose to it. And then of course, you know, we've got the pitcher part right down here, right down at the bottom. And the pitcher is filled with, I guess, digestive enzymes that help break down the prey. You know, carnivorous plants, they got to get their food somehow, right? So the digestive enzymes break down their food much like bacteria would do in our gut to our food. Now, the Nepenthes that I have on the table, this guy is a Nepenthes Bloody Mary. This guy is the Nepenthes hookeriana, and this guy is the Nepenthes ventrata. I gotta do something about the ventrata. It's getting a little bit out of control. These are my Nepenthes, and these are the pitchers, and someday I'm gonna have more because these guys are so exciting. I mean, really, truly. The next plant, the next treat that I am enjoying is this guy right here, which is the Sarracenia. This is known as a pitcher plant, but this one is not native to the Philippines. In fact, this is a native of the United States. And these guys are so neat. Unlike these pitchers, which are hanging right down, and then they have these little pitchers right here, these guys have openings right here at the top of their leaves, and then the pitchers are right here at the bottom towards the stem. These guys are named after a French-Canadian botanist, Michael Sarrazin, so Sarracenia, opposed to the pitcher plant, the tropical pitcher plant, which has liquid in it. These pitcher plants don't have fluid inside. If they do have fluid, it's very little. So what happens is when they have prey inside, the prey will just starve to death. And then, you know, they'll take their fluids and all that good stuff and nutrients. And it would be really hard to escape just based on the locations of the openings for these guys. So it's easy to get in, hard to get out. But man, they are stunning, stunning plants. So the Sarracenia actually determines how much water it needs inside. And if there's an excess of water, it will actually pump it out. With these guys, the leaves also will adjust pH if it's needed, and it will also release digestive enzymes. Yay! But that is the Sarracenia. The fifth plant on my list is the Pinguicula, and it would be these two pretty flowers right here. Right here. These guys. And let me go ahead and flash them to you. Right here. Yes. Aren't they pretty? And aren't they like flowery? So deceptive. I really love these guys. They're named Pinguicula after the Latin word pinguis, which means fat. And that's not fat with a PH, fat. Although it could be, you know, they're really pretty. But it is the fat with an F. So the leaves have this glossy, shiny sheen to them, and is, I guess, what is the basis for the name. It gives this oily appearance. And this, my friends, is an adhesive trap, right? Like we mentioned earlier. So pretty, sticky, bugs will fall on it. These guys typically eat gnats. And I mean, they're so gorgeous. Such a fun little plant to have. So these are the prettiest, I think, of the carnivorous plants. I mean, they just look like flowers. And the rosette shapes help just scream flowers too. So this is the Pinguicula morinensis, and this is the Pinguicula esseriana. So if you know someone who would be interested in carnivorous plants, but also likes pretty things, Pinguicula is for you. Anyhow, let's move on to our next one. Let me stop fawning over the pretty flowers. You know, they're drying up a little bit because we don't have them on a plate, but they'll be fine. They'll be fine. So the last plant on my list is the Byblis, and it would be this gorgeous fella right here. And check out that beautiful flower. Look, it's flowering for us. And if you get a closer look, there are more flowers on the middle. And if you get an even closer look, there are lots of bugs. Lots of bugs. So this Byblis has been a very, very busy plant. This plant is also known as the rainbow plant. So depending on who you ask, the name rainbow plant could be from two things. One, it could actually be because of the prism effect that these dews give off at a certain angle, colors of the rainbow. Or two, there are only seven species of the Byblis, but each one has a different color flower. So colors of the rainbow again. So the name Byblis is from a character in Greek mythology, and she was another unfortunate character, someone who fell in love with her brother and upon rejection decided to kill herself. But she shed many, many tears over her brother, and the gods or the nymphs, whoever, depending on whoever's story you're reading, apparently because there are many stories out there, took pity upon her and turned her into either a well or a fountain. And the fountain shape, you can see the leaves going all over the place, the tentacles going all over the place, tentacles going all over the place, but also because of the dews that are located on every part of the plant, including the stem. So this plant is quite old in terms of being part of the plant society. It was first described in 1808 by Richard Anthony Salisbury. Despite being introduced to botanical literature in 1808, a discovery in 2004 actually makes this plant older. So in 2004, a seed, one single seed was discovered in a dig, and it was a fossilized seed from the Byblis family. And that seed was dated back to, gosh, what do my notes say? 38 to 47 million years ago. It also employs, like I mentioned earlier about the traps, the 6 traps, an adhesive trap. So it's got those it's got those dews along its leaves, like I mentioned earlier, and along its stem. So you will see all these carcasses littered all over this pretty slender frame, this alien-looking frame. It's similar to the Pinguicula in that aspect where it employs an adhesive to it to capture its prey. But unlike the Drosera indica, remember how earlier I said it curls up in on itself? So the Droseras start moving. This guy doesn't. So the way that this guy works is, like I mentioned, he's got those that mucus, that dew on his leaves and on his stem. But what he also has on his leaves are separate digestive glands. So they secrete those digestive enzymes, and then they start enjoying their prey as they're stuck to the leaves. And that is it. That is it for Melissa's Little Shop of Horrors. The Little Shop of Horrors episode. Yeah, I love these guys. And if you guys keep carnivorous plants, I would love to know of more plants that I should try to get in my collection. I did see this plant called a cephalotus, I think is how it's pronounced. And it's a pitcher plant from Australia, but instead of growing out like this, it grows out from the ground. It looks so cool, but I'm not sure if I have the right conditions for it. It said that it needed cold nights, so desert type weather, hot during the day and very cold at night, and I don't have that set up here, and I'd have to probably set something up for it. But if you've got easier plants for me to consider, please feel free to leave those in the comment section down below. If you have anything else to add, anything cool to add about these guys, please do so. I am a complete nerd over information like this, and I would completely nerd out over information like this. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to share it, give it a like, subscribe to this channel. If you haven't already, turn on that notification bell to get notifications of future videos that I may release. I do have 2 more Halloween episodes coming up, and the next one is going to be a fun one based on Philippine folklore, so I would not miss it. I will be releasing a teaser, and I release teasers every Friday on my Tasteful Nodes account on Facebook, so check me out there. Finally, if you're just in the mood for pretty pictures or videos, check me out on Instagram. I'm there as Tasteful Nodes as well. Okay guys, until next time, sa uulitin, keep your notes classy and tasteful. Bye.